Weekend getaways. A time to escape the grind, recharge, and breathe in the fresh air. But sometimes they don't let you leave. Sometimes what follows you back isn't just memories, it's something much darker. Tonight, we dive into 3 true stories of weekend getaways gone horribly wrong. Buckle up, because after this you may think twice about that quick escape from the city. You wanted a break from reality? Be careful what you wish for. Story 1: The Abandoned Cabin. Our first story takes us to the heart of Oregon. Tim and Jess had found what seemed like the perfect spot for a romantic weekend, an isolated cabin surrounded by dense woods. It was picturesque, almost too perfect. The first night was everything they wanted: cozy fireplace, the sounds of nature, and absolute silence from the outside world. But the second night, Jess was the first to hear it. A faint tapping on the window. She laughed it off, probably a branch, she thought. But as the hours dragged on, the tapping grew louder, more deliberate. By midnight, the cabin was filled with the sounds of tapping from every window. Tim got up, his heart pounding as he scanned the dark forest beyond the glass. Nothing, just endless trees. But when they awoke the next morning, there was something they couldn't explain. Deep, claw-like scratches ran down the wooden walls of the cabin. No animal could have done that, at least no animal that should exist in those woods. The real kicker? When they tried to leave, the tires of their car had been slashed. Who or what was keeping them there? And if you're wondering how they made it back, well, some mysteries are better left unanswered. Anyone else getting serious wrong Airbnb vibes here? Yeah, 0 stars. Would not recommend. Story 2: The Motel That Vanished. Next up, we travel to New Mexico, where a group of friends on a cross-country road trip stumbled upon a cheap, no-frills motel. You know the kind: flickering neon sign, creaky doors, and a front desk clerk who looks like they haven't slept since the 90s. But it was late, they were tired, and they just needed a bed for the night. Everything seemed normal until 2 a.m. That's when one of the friends, Lisa, woke up to a strange sensation. Not a sound. Not a sight, but the overwhelming feeling of being watched. She glanced around the room and noticed something odd. The mirror on the wall seemed off. It was almost as if the reflection lagged behind her movements. Creeped out, she woke up the others. They decided to leave immediately, but when they reached the front desk, there was no one there. In fact, the entire motel was empty, deserted, and the road completely gone. By morning, they found themselves standing in an empty field. No motel, no sign of life. The nearest town was miles away. Were they dreaming? Or had they stumbled into a place that simply shouldn't exist? Needless to say, none of them have been able to explain it, and every time they look for that motel on the map, nothing comes up. Story 3: The Silent Lake. Our final story brings us to the edge of Lake Superior, where 3 childhood friends, Mark, Sarah, and Josh, decided to spend a weekend camping trip. The lake was serene, untouched, but the locals had warned them, don't stay after dark. Of course they didn't listen. The first night was peaceful, but on the second night, as they gathered around the campfire, the wind stopped. The birds, the insects, the rustling of leaves, everything went eerily silent. That's when they heard it: footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the lake. But when they turned to look, no one was there. Josh, always the brave one, stood up and walked toward the water. As he reached the shore, his flashlight flickered out, total darkness. And then the scream. It was Mark, pointing at something just below the surface of the lake. A pale, distorted face staring up at them, motionless. They ran, abandoning their tent and all their gear. When they returned the next morning with the local authorities, there was no sign of anything unusual, just the calm, silent lake. But they all swear they weren't alone that night. And sometimes when they close their eyes, they still see that face, just waiting beneath the water, watching. Weekend getaways, they say, are meant to leave you refreshed, renewed, but sometimes they leave you with nightmares instead. If you think these stories are chilling, just wait until you hear about the true horror of October. When the line between our world and the unknown becomes dangerously thin. Click here to watch 3 haunting true October scary stories, if you dare.